So we'll begin with our introductions, and thank you for those of you who are here today and joining us. We are very excited to have our presenters today from EBMUD. This has been part of our two-year-long series of workshops and support for teachers and those working in schools around building climate and environmental literacy for young students, K-12, TK-12, and Corinne can pop into the chat our resources that are on our website. We have recordings of our past webinars, and we have a lot of resources to help you find lesson plans and other types of things that have been shared throughout this series. We're looking forward to wrapping up this school year and continuing this work over the summer and in the coming school year. It's very exciting to see so many educators really looking for ways to incorporate climate and environmental literacy in their teaching with their students. And so we're very excited to have today a program about drought, something we are all very familiar with and that we're all experiencing, and that really is a way to make a direct connection to students' lives, because both they are experiencing it and living through it, and they have the power to actually do something, which is not always the case in some of the things that we teach about in climate literacy. So I'm very happy to have with us today Charla Sullivan and Alice Towey from East Bay Municipal Utility District, which is our water utility district here in the East Bay. And they're going to go ahead and take over the program. And so thank you for being here with us today, and welcome to all of the educators. Thank you for being here with us. As I mentioned, we are recording this, and we know we have a couple of dozen of teachers who were hoping to be here today. For those who aren't able to be here in person, we will go ahead and make sure they have the recording. So take it away, Alice and Charla.
Alice, do you want to get started with a couple words about drought, and then let me know when you want me to start the presentation?
Great, thanks so much, Charla. So yeah, my name is Alice Towey. I'm the manager of water conservation at EBMUD, and Charla Sullivan is in our community affairs group. So we have had a busy week here at EBMUD. Some of you might have heard, just given the kind of persistent dry conditions and just the way things have been going statewide, our board of directors took some additional drought actions on Tuesday. So that's probably been in the news quite a bit. They voted to go, we were in a stage 1 drought, so they voted to move to a stage 2 drought with a mandatory 10% community water reduction goal. So that means we're trying to, collectively, throughout our service area, reduce water use by 10%. They also took some additional actions. We have something called an excessive use penalty ordinance, which is meant to discourage really, really high levels of water use by single family customers. I mean, folks using like, 1,600 gallons of water or more a day, which is, quite a bit. And then we also have some additional restrictions, things like limitations on, only irrigating 3 days a week, that kind of thing. But we're not alone in this, right? Like, I know it's a statewide issue and an issue affecting, I think, the entire Western US. It's also been in the news that Metropolitan Water District down in Southern California just for the first time ever passed some restrictions, and they're actually restricting people to irrigating only 1 day a week. And we know that, in California, we know that droughts happen frequently, like anybody who's lived in the state, we've been through this, we know it happens, but we also know that with climate change, droughts are becoming more frequent and potentially more severe. And we're facing additional constraints on our water supply. I mean, drought for EBMUD, that means we get potentially less snow and rain. It changes the patterns of when that precipitation falls. So like in the past, we would get a lot of snow. We'd have that nice snowpack that's kind of like storing the water until it's, kind of gradually melts. But now with climate change, we're starting to see that more of that water is coming in the form of rain. It's warmer. We also know that warmer temperatures affect the amount of water that we need. When it's warmer out, plants need more water for irrigation, people need more water, animals need more water. So, there's a lot of ways that, climate change affects us as an organization. So we're really happy to be here today. We really appreciate your interest and everything that you're doing to, help your students understand what's going on. And I was saying to Teresa just, before we got started, I know sometimes when we talk about things like climate change or environmental issues, it can feel very overwhelming and you can feel very powerless. But the nice thing about talking about water conservation, I think, is that it is a place where, our individual actions do have an effect. Like here in East Bay Mud, our water, the majority of it, as you'll see in the slides, comes from the McCulmy River watershed. So when people do conserve water, that is actually freeing up water that we can then use to, maintain the habitat for salmon, eagles, other, creatures that live in that habitat that we maintain. So we do have a slide deck that we've put together. A big shout out to Charlotte, who did most of the work on it, and it looks great. So we're going to just I'm just going to sort of walk you through the slides, as if I was presenting to a classroom. The slides do, when we send them out, they do have sort of speaking notes. And then at the end, there are some additional resources. But we also want to hear from you. I mean, if there, as we go through this, if there are particular topics that kind of sound like they're really interesting to you, or like you'd want to know more, please let us know, because that kind of helps us in our sort of like, program development, because we want to make sure we're being responsive and, providing materials that'll be useful for you as teachers. So I don't know, Charlotte, if you want to add anything, or if we should just kind of dive in.
You said what I was going to plug.
Sorry.
That's great. Please contact us, because we want to know what teachers are looking for. That's actually something Teresa and we kind of partnered together to do a pilot, and where East Bay Mud actually went into the 3rd to 5th grade classrooms, where kind of the water science meets the curriculum in California. And what we heard from teachers is that, different curriculums are looking for different things, but really each unit might be tailored to something else. East Bay Mud does offer free speakers, so we can have one of our water conservation staff come and speak in the classroom. And really our staff they're so wonderful with children, especially. So talking to students and talking about their individual actions and the footprint that they have on this planet is something that we're interested in doing, and really hearing from teachers what you guys want. So please be honest, be open, and let us know what you need.
Okay, so we'll start the slideshow then, I guess. So first, this is teaching about drought, and what is a drought and what can we do about it? And this has some lessons and activities. We were kind of gearing it towards, TK to 8th grade. And you can see there the link, and I think we'll kind of go over that at the end as well. We have a section of our website, ebmud.com/education, where we have a whole bunch of other like resources and activities. But if you could go to the next slide. So to start out, we have this really wonderful animation that just got finished and posted to our YouTube that talks a little bit about who East Bay Mud is and what we do.
Hey there, I'm a fire hydrant on your street, and I play a critical role in the water cycle and your service. We've all learned about the natural water cycle, but what about the water that's running through your faucet? Let's take a look at where your drinking water comes from, how it gets to you, and where it goes after you've used it. Our planet's surface is 71% water, but humans can only drink fresh water, which is about 1% of all the water on the planet. This can fall as either snow or rain. That's where we come in. Most of our water comes from the rivers and the snow in the mountains. We move it using aqueducts and store the water behind dams and reservoirs. Our largest is Party Reservoir in the Sierra Nevada foothills. It stores 90% of our drinking water. East Bay Mud manages and protects the land, plants, and animals in this watershed to ensure your water is the highest quality. In order to make sure the water supply meets state and federal regulations, we take it to one of our water treatment plants, where it goes through a 6-step process to filter and disinfect the water to make it safe to drink. As the water leaves the treatment plant, we add chloramine, which helps protect the public by killing any microorganisms such as bacteria or viruses. Then the water goes through our distribution pipelines to your home and your community. This is where I come in too. I am on your street in case of fire or emergency. Hey, what are you doing? Wait, back off. You also play a very important part in our water cycle. This water went through a lot to get to you, so make the most of it. Don't leave the faucet running if you're not using it, and pick water-efficient plants in your garden.
Thanks, talking fire hydrant.
After the water leaves your home via the drains and sewer, it goes to our wastewater treatment plant, where we first screen it for large items that should not be in there, such as wipes, pharmaceuticals, grease, and trash. Don't flush these items or put them down the drain.
Oh, that makes sense.
Remember, these items are bad for the public pipes and yours, and can lead to sewage backups at home. P.U.
Ugh, Gross.
The only things that should be flushed down your toilet are the 3 Ps: poo, pee, and toilet paper. Once the water comes to our wastewater treatment plant, it goes through a disinfection and dechlorination process to make it safe to rejoin the natural water cycle. Once it's treated, we release it through a large underground pipe back to the San Francisco Bay, where it joins the ocean. From there, the process can start all over again. And that's the built East Bay Mud water system, from watershed to bay. So whether you're drinking a glass of water or flushing it down the drain, know that East Bay Mud is taking care of it, and it costs you only a penny per gallon. Well, that's all I have. Goodbye for now.
Thanks, Charla. I like the little talking fire hydrant, but I'm a geek, so that I would be amused by that. So, whoops, just going to the next slide. So one thing we wanted to do, when we were putting these slides together, was we wanted to really make it as interactive as possible. So we've got a few activities in here that you can go through with your students, and of course these can all, be modified as appropriate. So the first activity is think about all the ways you used water today. Write them down and see how long your list can get. And obviously, if you're working, depending what age group you're working with, if it's more appropriate, if you want to have the kids like drawing things out, or like, have something up on a whiteboard where, people come and share. But we want people to start thinking about, how water is used and the ways that they interact with water in their daily lives. Next slide, please. Excuse me. So then the next part of this activity is getting the students to think a little bit more broadly. So we've identified some of the ways that we use water. Maybe it's, I use it in the shower, or when I brush my teeth, I drink water, I water the plants around the house. And then we also want them to start thinking again about that connection to the watershed and to the rest of the world. So what are the other living creatures that use water? And I think we've got a few examples here, if you want to click through.
Let the teachers play. Teachers,
oh, okay. Who has some ideas of some other living creatures that use water? You can either unmute yourself or you can just put it in the chat.
Fish.
Fish, yes, absolutely.
Birds.
Crustacean.
Yes.
Insects.
Trees.
I heard animals, fish,
Trees. Insects.
trees. Oh, trees, like plants and food, crops.
Yeah.
Oh,
Any organic organism.
Any
Perfect.
organic organism, absolutely right. So, again, we want students to start thinking about that. And then the other part, which is a little bit more tricky, is thinking about the hidden uses of water. And so this, again, depending what age group of student you're working with, you might have to guide them through a little bit. But, just thinking about like, okay, what objects or things do you encounter in your daily life that require water?
Our cars.
Cars,
Oh,
clothing, yeah.
Yeah, showers.
Pretty much anything. And so one of the points we want to make for students is that, pretty much anything that you're interacting with, from the clothes that you wear, if you've got like a box of Kleenex, your phone, like if you're using gas for your car, all of those products require water in their manufacture. So, we really see how essential water is, not just to our daily lives, but just also these kind of hidden uses of water that we might not think about. Next slide. So now we want to talk a little bit about East Bay Mud specifically. So this map shows our service area. We provide water to about 1.4 million customers in the East Bay area. We extend all the way up from like sort of Crockett and Rodeo in the north, all the way down to Hayward. And then east, you can see out to sort of Walnut Creek and Black Hawk. We cover Oakland, Berkeley, all the way up to, Richmond, El Cerrito. So pretty large area. And that's that green area. And just if you're interested, that sort of hatched green area, that's the area that we provide wastewater treatment service to as well. We provide wastewater treatment for, I think it's around, I want to say around 800,000 customers. And then there's a few other wastewater treatment plants that, serve other parts of our service area. So that's a lot of people. And another thing you can kind of see on this map is you can see some of our main kind of, I'm doing this thing where I'm like pointing at the screen as if you can see what I'm pointing at. So I apologize. But, you can see some of our, main terminal reservoirs like San Pablo Reservoir, Briones. That's where we kind of like store water. Just a point of interest is that, East Bay Mud, we have a policy that we try to maintain 180 days worth of supply in these what we call terminal reservoirs. So that way, if there is an earthquake or something like that that affects our aqueducts, excuse me, we have water supply. Next slide, please. So now we want to talk to the students a little bit about, what we call the natural and sort of built water cycle. So you can see here the natural water cycle, that's something we're all familiar with, where water, it starts in clouds, it comes down as precipitation. Excuse me, that can be rain or snow. In some cases that gets into the ground through percolation. It can run off into rivers and streams, and then it goes back up into clouds via either transpiration, where plants are kind of like almost like exhaling some of the water, or through evaporation. And then on the other half of this slide, we have the built environment. So this is the system that we as humans have put in place to interact with that natural environment so that we can have access to that water and keep it safe to drink. And like we saw in that little video, excuse me, for East Bay Mud, it's a full cycle process. Like we get the water from the natural environment, we treat it, we bring it to your home, and then we also collect it and treat it and run it out to the bay. I see a question: do we use any of our reservoir water to generate energy for the Bay Area? We do have at our upcountry reservoirs, Pardee and Comanche, we do have hydropower up there. We also have some renewable energy products. Like, it's always interesting when we talk about our wastewater treatment plant. There's a lot of organic material there. We actually have these digesters that it's basically this biological process that produces methane gas when it's treating the wastewater. And we actually have some engines and a turbine that burn that. So our wastewater treatment plant is actually like producing more energy than it uses. We were the first, I believe the first wastewater treatment plant in the country to do that. I got my start at East Bay Mud working in wastewater. And I have to say, if you're interested in like the science, like the grosser it is, the more cool it is. Like wastewater treatment it's so gross and it's so cool. Anyway, sorry, next slide. So we also want to talk to the students about the watershed, which is the area around our reservoirs. So in East Bay Mud's case, we have watershed up in the McCalmey watershed, where most of our water comes from, around Pardee and Comanche. We also have watershed lands here in the East Bay, including a number of like trails and recreational areas where students can go and actually interact with nature. And you can see the watersheds, usually involve creeks or reservoirs. They have plants, they have fish and animals that rely on that water to keep them healthy, just like we do. And a discussion point for students is, what happens to those plants and animals and us if the water dries up? Next slide. So in East Bay Mud's case, our watershed, the majority of our water comes from the McCalmey River, which is about 90 miles away in the Sierra Nevada Mountains. So we are fed by the McCalmey River. Which means we get a lot of that lovely Sierra Nevada snow melts and precipitation. So it's really, really high quality water. We're very, very lucky. The water quality is just amazing. When we bring it into our system, we don't actually have to treat it that much because it's just such good quality to begin with. And that watershed is home to salmon, bald eagles, osprey, other waterfowls. It's a really, really gorgeous area. There's also a lot of recreation on the lower McCalmey River downstream of our dams. So we, in addition to being a water agency, we also do a lot of work to kind of manage that ecosystem and manage the salmon fishery in particular. Next slide. So what does the built drinking water system look like for East Bay Mud? And this map is maybe a little complicated, but we can also provide this to you as like a larger sort of PDF. But you can see over there on the right, that kind of bluish area, that's the watershed. That's like up in the mountains for the McCalmey River watershed. So that's where the water actually comes from. And then, the snow melt and the rain flow down into our Pardee and Comanche reservoirs. Pardee Reservoir was built in, I believe, 1929. And that's where we, store our drinking water comes from. From Pardee Reservoir, we have our McCalmey aqueducts. These are giant pipes. I mean, they're huge. You can see in that picture, they're about 92 miles long, and those aqueducts take the water from Pardee and just bring it all the way to East Bay Mud service area. Another way that we're really fortunate here at East Bay Mud is that most of that system is gravity fed. So we don't actually have to do that much pumping to get that water from the reservoir down to our service area. And then you can see there a picture of our Orinda treatment plant. So of course, when the water does get to our service area, we have 5 different treatment plants that we use to treat that water to very high standards. We always meet and exceed state and federal drinking water standards. Next slide. So water treatment. Charla, how often each year is our water tested for water quality?
I don't know, teachers, why don't you answer this question? It's in the thousands, in the tens of thousands. So I'll let some teachers take a stab at, and you can put it in the chat or you can say it out. But what are your thoughts? I'll take like 2 or 3 answers.
Can you repeat the question, Charla?
How many thousands of times a year is East Bay Mud water sampled for water quality or tested for water quality?
10,000.
Higher. Chad should know. He went to he got a water quality.
That's
He
too
said-
much pressure. Too much pressure.
We have
Is it a
guest-
couple times a day?
So I mean, yeah, it's over 20,000 times a year. So a couple times a day, right? It's upwards of that number. Yeah.
And it's interesting to know, we do, like you can see in these pictures, we do testing at our actual water treatment plants, but we also have a whole team of water system inspectors who actually go out. We actually do testing out in the field. We do testing at our reservoirs. So we are very, very concerned about our water quality. We want to make sure that everybody in our community has water that's safe to drink. East Bay Mud, I want to say just on water treatment, excuse me, I'm just all this talking. We were one of the first agencies in the country that really pushed, we had this Get Out the Lead program where we actually were pushing and working with the state legislature to get rid of lead in the private laterals. So we got rid of the lead in our distribution system. And then we were working on programs to try to make sure that we got lead out of the actual pipes that go to people's homes and fixtures. So we're very proud of that. Our system is, effectively lead free, but we do have free lead testing kits. If people are concerned that they might still have some lead in their laterals or in their homes, they can come to our website and request those lead testing kits, and we will send that out to them because we, obviously take that very seriously. Next slide. So how much water do you use?
You signed it and date it?
And we wanted to, when Charla and I were working on this, we wanted to try to put this into terms that students can understand, because, a lot of times at East Bay Mud, we talk about things in terms of gallons or millions of gallons or acre feet. So we were trying to convert some things to cups. So if you can think about just like a cup of water that like a kid can, hold in their hands. So typically a family, usually indoor water use is around 55 gallons per person per day. And then people also use water outdoor for irrigation. So that means that for a family of 4, you're talking about 3,520 cups of water that they're using every day to drink, bathe, brush their teeth, and that kind of thing. It takes 48 cups of water to make just 1 gallon of gas. East Bay Mud has done a lot of work with some of the refineries in our service area to, get them to be more efficient and to use recycled water, but it does take a lot of water to make gasoline. And of course, the food we eat also takes water. For example, it takes about 528 cups of water to grow 1 apple. And of course, as we mentioned before, consumer products. So for example, a pair of jeans takes over 7,000 cups of water. And when you get the slides in the speaker notes, we do have links to, where some of these statistics came from. Next slide. So now we want to get into why is it important to conserve water? So as we've discussed with the students, our community, every living thing on earth needs water to survive. We can't make more water than we have. So we should only use what we need and not a drop more. And that's called water conservation. And next, we're going to start talking about how some of our small actions can have big impacts if we all do them together. Next slide. So what is drought? We want to talk about this a little bit. This might be, just stepping outside for a little bit. We have a lot of information on our website at East Bay Mud about the current drought conditions. Like I said, I know it's been in the news a lot. So, as you get into this section, this might be a place to, share some of that additional information. Next slide. So drought, I guess in the previous slide, you probably want to just say explicitly, drought is basically what happens when we don't have enough water, when we don't, get enough snow and rain. And here in California, we know that sometimes we can have droughts that last multiple years, right? When we're in that situation right now where, for the state of California, this is like the third dry year in a row. So it's like, as we get thirsty and as the plants get thirsty, over time that stress can continue. And then, as we said earlier, we also know that with climate change, with the world getting warmer, these droughts are becoming more frequent. Next slide. So here we have an activity, how students and their families can conserve water. So you can see here we have these two in each column. There are kind of two different options. Like, you can either, for example, on the far left, you can turn off the water when you brush your teeth, or you can leave the water on when you brush your teeth. You can either run a full load of laundry or you can wash a half load of laundry. And so the activity here is to invite the students to pick, for each of those columns, which do they think is the water saving activity? Do you think it's better to take a shower? Do you think it's better to take a bath? And then, once they identify that, you can see how much water you actually save. For example, and one thing that we really try to stress for folks is that you can actually save quite a bit of water if you're careful about running full loads in the laundry, keeping your dish, making sure that your dishwasher is always full when you run it. Next slide.
I just wanted to chime in,
sorry.
Alice, to note that I really appreciate how these slides, these images are really things that kids can have some agency around.
Yes.
And it's things choices that students can make. And so that's really empowering. And I just think it's really great that those are the things you're highlighting here. So.
Yeah, and we were really trying to be conscientious about that because, when we sort of talk broadly, especially to adults about water conservation, we talk a lot about finding and fixing leaks and we talk about irrigation systems, but we did want to keep this a little bit more at like the kid level of like, things that they might, places where they might actually be making choices in their daily lives. Next slide. So we do, this is a little bit of a, segue maybe, but we do always want to, plug jobs at East Bay MUD. We're always trying to encourage kids to think about, the many different types of careers we have at East Bay MUD. So, we invite the students to think about, if they find this is interesting, there's a lot of different jobs at East Bay MUD where you can help people in your community to have clean water and to, have a healthy environment. And some of those jobs are things like being an electrician or a plumber. If you're somebody who enjoys science, we have chemists, we have rangers like Han there who manages our natural resource areas and interacts with the public. We have artists and designers who help us come up with materials like this. We also have staff in water conservation. So if you really enjoy this, if this is something you care about, we have jobs here where people, I have staff that deal with the community every day and try to help individual customers save water. Next slide. So additional learning, we did want to highlight here some additional resources for you. So the US Federal EPA's Water Sense program has a Water Sense Kids that has some educational materials. The California Department of Water Resources also does. I really want to plug this Water Use It Wisely. This is a, I think, Arizona-based nonprofit. I think they get a lot of funding from state and water agencies. They have some really fabulous activities. They even have some like online games that kids can play, having to do with water. Like they have their, I think it's called like Tip Tank, which is kind of almost like memory where you're kind of picking different cards and then it shows you ways to save water. And then I think Charla wanted to maybe, I think you wanted to maybe walk through some of the East Bay MUD education resources.
I do, and actually I'll show you guys the Tip Tank one too. Let me stop sharing and then share something else. Give me 1 second.
At one point, Charlotte and I were putting this presentation together and I was showing her the Tip Tank game and we totally got distracted and we're like, like 5 minutes later, we're like, oh wait, we're supposed to be working.
True story.
True story, yes. I think it was like the end of a day and we were both kind of tired and we were like, ooh, let's play this game.
Hilarious. So Tip Tank is fun because it gives you a little how to play. This is fun. I think really, especially for like middle school level kids, or maybe like maybe a 4th or 5th grade and up, depending on like reading proficiency, but it's a memory game. So you can play, right? Don't forget to find the match. Don't drain the tank. So this is fun. So, okay, remember what they were. I think this is a toothbrush. This is a toothbrush. Yes. And then they give you a tip. Turn off the water while you brush your teeth and save up to 4 gallons a minute. So we had ours a day, but this is per minute. And you continue, you can pick something else. So let me see. Ooh, what's that? I don't know. Wrong answer. Okay. Anyways, we don't have to do all of these, but this is fun. Oh, okay. I know another one. This one and this one. Okay, what a match. Water tip number 38. Take 5-minute showers instead of baths. A full bathtub requires up to 70 gallons of water. What's this? No. No. I might drain the tank, you guys. Oh, wait. Yes, what a match. So anyways, this is the last time I'm going to do, but you guys get the idea of the game. That the Colorado River is 1,450 miles long, beginning in Colorado and ending in Mexico. It provides 36% of Arizona's drinking water. This is kind of neat. My dad lives in Arizona, so Arizona is a very water challenged place. And they literally steal water from everywhere else. And then I wanted to, so this gives you guys an idea of some of the educational resources here that are kind of fun and interactive for students. And I encourage you to, you can play your own memory game like this. So if you want to only have like 4 or 5 things or 6 things, I guess you need like a little grid where you have like a memory game. You can pull these same stats, or you can ask East Bay Mud for some stats. We are always available as your subject matter experts, that if there's some stat that you're looking for, we're happy to provide it for you. So if there's something lesson wise, we are happy to provide you with that resource. Lens knows, I see her on and I just gave her away. I was like, we're going to have a sponsorship. And I was like, but you can have all this information for free. I don't care because it's the dual message. We want people to know about these things. Here's the video, you guys. So the video that we played for you today, this is right now, it says about East Bay Mud. It's the board meeting because I've gone to the next thing. But if you rewind it, it is our about East Bay Mud video. So it's there. So if you go to our eastbaymud.com/education, that's where you can find our educational resources page. We also have the fossils in the watershed. And this is a really neat tour. Basically, if you go to look at mastodons, this is in English, Spanish, and Chinese, and you can take a tour. And this is actual fossils that were found in the watershed. So I do love to say, when we're talking about watershed to students, the same water that dinosaurs, mastodons, and these other types of prehistoric that predate humans drank, we're drinking the same water. We can neither create nor destroy water. So here's our Mokelumne watershed. This is the Sierra Nevada mountains. And then there's some facts that you guys already heard about from Alice in her presentation. And then it takes you through this kind of guided tour of the reservoir, Comanche Reservoir. It takes you through to the present day, and it takes you to some nice photos of our actual people in our watershed enjoying our watershed. And then I imagine what it was like then. See, these animals have been here for a million years, and the population was robust. It's beautiful. So this is the ranger naturalist who found these fossils, and he was just out doing routine work on the watershed. So there's a little expose by Greg here. Then there's some petrified fossils. This exhibit is actually, if your students, if you have funds to go places, this exhibit is at Chico. So if you would like to go to Chico, it's there. And then there's more. So anyways, this gives you just a little bit of insight, and then it shows like what animals are found in what period of time they were found in. And this is a fun poster. You guys can actually, if you want a poster, if any of you here want a poster, this poster is available at East Bay Mud. And then experts, prehistoric fish. They look a lot like our fish today. Modern tapir. And then the mastodon, of course. And then this is fun. This shows like what it looked like then, what it looks like now as a fossil. And then here's like the animal. It just talks about, you know, what the prehistoric animal was versus the animal today. So this is really fun. So something educational. We have a couple educational resources like this on the website. There's also the water and wastewater treatment plant virtual tours. So say you wanted to know what happens to your wastewater, the same type of tour exists. You would click on the wastewater treatment plant tour. I'm not going to go through all of these, just in the interest of time. We want you guys to be able to answer questions. So we also have our water treatment plant tour. These are virtual. These are only in English. And then we also have our flip book. This one's really fun, you guys. The flip book basically is our East Bay Express, and you can look through the flip book and you can see, you know, more information about East Bay Mud. And this is something that we kind of do annually. And it's kind of this is kind of factual. This is kind of for older level kids, but this is something that can be utilized. There's a lot of good facts, fun facts in here. And then just has some sponsors and things in the end. Other educational resources are our activity books. We have a bunch of activity books. I do have a bid out right now that's redoing several activity books. So there will be new activity books. They're going to be grouped into K through 5, grades 6 to 8, and then grades 9 to 12. So there will be corresponding activities that go to each one of those booklets that really get the students to think about their footprint and actionable items, things that they can do in their own communities. And then we have water conservation at home and at school. We have pollution prevention. Oh, look, there's me and my middle baby. And then outside and on your own. One thing I really want to highlight for you guys is our outdoor classrooms. East Bay Med runs an outdoor classroom session. And basically, if you're interested in coming to visit our outdoor classrooms, you go to the outdoor classrooms. It's going to give us a disclaimer here. Due to COVID, we're not running our outdoor activities. However, since we're nearing the end of the school year, we are actually going back to an in-person, depending on what COVID brings us in this next iteration. We are hoping that we are going to be resume these in person. So November through April on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we do run these from 9:30 to 12. And then here are the different locations: Castro Valley, El Sobrante, Pinole, and Moraga. So you can have 35 students. We take all grade levels, and transportation should be provided by the schools. However, I am working on an RFP right now that's going to try to address some of the gaps where some schools may not have transportation. So if there's a Title I school, we'll be given preference that looking for transportation. They can apply and say, we need this because of our status, and then we will be able to fund that trip. We're also looking at hopefully sponsoring with the Oakland Museum so that we can get some kids to come through that way too. So I'm excited about that. Here's the reservation information. You would look at the reservation calendar here, or you could call us. Right now, as you can see, since we're not showing the program in person right now, you won't see the calendar. But normally here you can pick the calendar, click on the date, and you would be able to schedule your tour. And this is fun because the outdoor education program is really, it's the way for the students to understand the connection between their watershed and the lands that the water runs through, and the tie to what happens when they turn on the tap. So those are the two things I think often we get lost in like the human footprint on our environment. If you litter, that the litter could end up in the creek, or it could end up in a river, or it could end up on our waterways. It can contaminate our water. So just trying to get kids to think about what does it mean to protect the watershed, and what does that mean for their actual water that they're using for all of their daily uses. So let me go back. There's one other thing I want to show you guys, and then I'm going to hand it back to Alice for a second, and that is say you want to request a speaker for your students, and this is free of charge to anyone who wants it. So if a classroom is doing a specific lesson on chemistry, for instance, like Chad is doing, and wants to have a chemist come and talk to the class, you could say, this is the name of my organization, and where, your organization, who's the contact person. What are you looking for? Your speaker topic, when, the date, what's your alternative dates? And you can submit this. Currently, it's going to come to me or my boss, and we'll go and we'll find you a speaker. And East Bay Med incentivizes this type of programming. So we will pay our folks to come and speak to your students free of charge. All we need to know is when you request it so that we can make sure to allocate your request.
That's awesome.
Yeah, if you guys have any questions about this is really, if you have a career fair that you want us to appear in, we're happy to be there. East Bay Med has various disciplines, as Alice went through on the slide with careers. Careers I think are really related to helping students understand their impact in the community, because these students might actually be the people who are protecting our watershed, ensuring there's enough water for all of us to drink, and for our pets, and all of those things we don't necessarily think about on a daily basis. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and then go back to, actually, I'm not going to stop sharing away. I'm going to go here and put our contact slide up here.
Oh yeah, so one other activity that we did want to kind of mention as an idea is something we promote in water conservation, is the idea of doing water audits. So we have something called a home water survey kit. Anybody in East Bay Mud service area can request this. It shows up in a little envelope. It's got a little booklet inside. I'm going to see if I can raise this so you can actually see it. So, it walks you through the process of kind of going through your home step by step and checking for leaks. And it has a little bag where you can kind of check the flow rate from your faucets. And then it has a couple little dye tabs to check your toilets for leaks, because we know a lot of toilets leak. So we send these out. So, if you have students who are in our service area, if they want to do something like that at home, or if you want to give that as an assignment, they can request, a free water survey kit from us and then go through that process with their parents. We also wanted to suggest a fun activity if you want to get up and move around, is doing a school water audit, where the kids can, maybe get some clipboards, some paper, and walk around their school, find out where water is being used. How many bathrooms do you have? How many sinks? Do you have an irrigation system outside? Students can also check for leaks. Like if you see, a faucet or a fountain that's dripping, or if you're outside and you see that there's an area where a sprinkler head is broken and there's a pool of water, you can, as a student, identify those and, report them to the school to be fixed. And then again, a nice take-home activity is to, suggest that the students, or you can get in touch with us and we can send you a bunch of these home survey kits that, you can pass out and kids can, go through the process at home with their families. So, and then I think the next slide was just, thank you. So EBMUD Water Conservation, and I'm going to put my email address in the chat. So, as we said, if you have any questions, if there's anything that was interesting to you that you're like, wow, I'd really like to learn more about that. As Charlotte pointed out, you can go to the speaker request form. If you want somebody from water conservation to come and talk to your school, you can also just email me. Like our staff, we really love getting out into the community and doing these types of programs with kids. And again, if there's anything here that you're like, wow, that was really interesting, we'd actually, it would be really helpful for us to know more about that or to have more resources. Please let us know, because as we're, working on revising our educational curriculum, we do want to make sure that it's responsive to your actual needs. And I think that was it. Charlotte, did you have anything else?
Is there time for the teachers who've joined us, if people have some questions?
Absolutely. Yes. If you have questions, please.
So if anyone has some questions, now's your chance to you have Alice and Charlotte's undivided attention.
Wow, guys, we really covered everything you wanted to know, I see.
In terms of the guest speaker, do you travel out to San Francisco and all?
We tend to cover our own service area in the East Bay, but I do know San Francisco. My sort of counterpart over there, Julie Ortiz, who managed their conservation program. San Francisco also has a very well-developed conservation program. They do a lot of education. So yeah, you can check with them, certainly. I might be able to find.
Can you give us that contacts?
Yeah, let me see if I'll see if I can find, I know I was just looking at their website the other day. Let me see if I can find that or an email or a link and put that in the chat.
Yeah, San Francisco PUC has a really robust education program that they spend a ton of money on. East Bay Mud has zero budget for education. It's like, I'm embarrassed to say what it is. So, but what we have found is that we've been able to make really good partnerships. So if there's a really amazing partnership that a school is looking for, East Bay Mud is totally game to help with a partnership, since we don't have those types of funds. Something that we didn't mention, East Bay Mud's a not-for-profit agency. So we really can only charge our customers for the actual cost of delivering and treating the drinking water that comes to your tap, and the people that it takes to do that. So it's really infrastructure and people that your ratepayer dollars are paying for, which other districts, we're a retailer of water, like SFPUC is a wholesaler of water. So they have more budget to work with in general. And many agencies are like that. So it's just a bit different. But we really are interested in doing things that are partnership related, where we can come to you, we can provide any factoids that you're looking for as you're going through and developing curriculum in your classroom and thinking about climate change and thinking about where students' water is coming from and what they can do, actions they can take. That's something that we would be able to help with. Absolutely. Oh, here's a couple questions in the chat. Okay, I've got to leave. Okay, watershed project.
Some folks had to duck out, but we do still have a few people on. And one of the things that I would love to hear about, I know one of the programs that you have is getting kids to come out to the watershed. And I know that's a little bit different than talking about drought, but it's a chance to sort of see up close what the watershed is like. Are you anticipating those might resume in the
fall?
In the fall, yeah.
Absolutely. So that's the site I was showing you guys. That's the site that right now the program is not running in person, but we do anticipate that in the fall, from November to April, that the program will run again, and that there will be something in place that if a school doesn't have the resources to, necessarily provide travel, that we will be able to get a school to one of the various locations and figure out how to fund that. So that's something that's really important to us. We do want to help students make the tie between what the watershed is. I think there's a lot of lack of understanding on even what is a watershed. And a lot of these students have watersheds literally in their backyard. If you live in El Bronte, much of the El Bronte area is actually East Bay Mud watershed, San Leandro, Upper San Leandro, that area. We have quite a bit of watershed that we maintain. And a lot of these reservoirs that students go and maybe a little paddle boat or go into fish at the San Pablo Reservoir, these are all East Bay Mud owned reservoirs, and the lands around them are protected watershed. And you can get just a day pass. Some of them are free. Some of them you need a day pass to go to hike on the trails and things. So the outdoor education program, as Teresa mentioned, is one of our premier outdoor education opportunities for students to really get a hands-on experience about what the watershed is, with a really direct tie to what that means for the water that comes out of their taps on the other end when they use it. And they get to do fun projects, like they get to plant willow trees. Willows are native California plants that are self-regenerating. However, since in California, we spent a lot of time in the earlier part of the century grazing cattle and kind of trampling those lands, and a lot of erosion took place in creeks. So, and those trees weren't able to grow, but we could help the willows along by cutting pieces of them and then sticking them along the creek side. And in 5 years, those turn into little baby willow trees. It's super cool.
And the other question that I had around the drought, back to drought, is the forecasting. And so as an agency, how are the folks at East Bay Mud thinking about not only like, oh my gosh, it didn't rain this month, we have a problem. How are they looking at the pattern over time and tracking those changes and having the ability to plan for what's going to happen, the next year,
absolutely.
the winter.
That's a great question. So, and we have folks who that is their entire job in our operations department. They have this really complicated sort of statistical model. So we have, for our watershed, we have about 100 years of records of the hydrology. So we're able to, kind of derive a lot of statistics from that. So as we go through the water year, we're always we're always doing these projections based on that historic hydrology. So, for example, we'll get into October, November, and we'll look at how much snow we've gotten so far, how much water's in our reservoir. And then we'll say, based on our historic hydrology, if it's an average year, here's what it's going to look like. If it's a dry year from here on out, here's what it's going to look like. And we're constantly updating those models. And it's an art and a science. It is getting a little more challenging. And that's something that I think a lot of water agencies have seen is, it's like we're relying on this historic hydrology, but we know that with climate change, the rainfall and snow patterns that we had, 100 years ago, or even 50 years ago, or even 20 years ago, probably aren't valid anymore. So we are constantly, trying to think of better ways to do that forecasting. Another thing that helps us from a water perspective is just better weather forecasting, right? Like, it used to be, people that managed water systems, 100 years ago, like you kind of look at the clouds, look at the sky, and maybe it's going to snow, maybe it's going to rain. But we have much more sophisticated satellite technology right now that, produces data that we as a water agency have access to help us predict, when we're going to get storms, what size of storms, where they're going to hit. Here in California, one thing that's particularly important you might hear a lot about is tracking what's called atmospheric rivers, which are a big source of water for us. And these are just literal rivers in the sky, just like these areas, just these sort of bands of really intense moisture in the sky that, tend to account for a significant amount of our precipitation here in California. So yeah, it's the folks that manage our models, our sort of forecasting models, I give them props. It is super complicated because they also have to take into consideration, how much water people are actually using. So like one thing we thought about this year is just, not just how much snow did we get and how much water is in our reservoir, but how much water do we think people are going to use? And that's related to the temperature, that's related to, how much conservation we're asking for. And it gets pretty tricky, and it's definitely getting a little more complicated with climate change because we can't always look to the past to tell us, how things might turn out.
Awesome. Are there any additional questions as we wrap up today?
I do have one other thing to share with you guys, something fun that Alice and I kind of came up with. So let me show it to you. While you guys think of any more questions you might have. I have, of course, 85,000 windows open. So give me 1 second while I find it. Here we go. So this is fun. You can make one of these for, I don't know if any of you make like crossword scrambles, but you can make them with little clues. So my word is having a conniption, so maybe I won't be able to share this with you.
Is that something that's available on your website, or did you do that in an external crossword creator website?
I did it in a crossword creator. I'm trying to see if I still have it open since, of course, here we go. Here we go. Let me see if I can share this with you guys instead. Since my word has decided it will not work, I will share it in Google Chrome instead. Here we go. So I can hide the answers. Let's see if we can hide answers. You guys can play this game, but when a pipe drips, because it has there's spelling here that I fixed on my final, but it has a crack, then it has a leak. The act of not wasting water and only using water that we need is saving. And then a condition when there's not enough water is drought. And a land area with living things that brings rain and snow melt to creeks, streams, and rivers, and eventually to lakes, bays, and the ocean is a watershed. On the downside, rain and snow that falls from the clouds in the sky, this is a hard one, is what? Can anyone answer? Precipitation. And then the liquid that every living creature on the earth needs to survive is water. And the number of minutes that you should shower to save water that was in the video is 5. And then when you use something carelessly, that's called wasting it. So you can, if you want, I'm happy to make the final version available on the website, or everyone who attended this seminar, we're going to provide the slides. Is everyone in Google Slides? I made it in Google Slides because I know most of the teachers use that format. But if that's not something that you support, just let us know. But we're happy to share the slides with teachers in Google Slides, and you can kind of tailor them to what works best for you. And then by making a copy of it and then working around if you need something, some additional SME factoid from EBMUD because your class is doing something a little more advanced, or maybe you need some other factoid because you're making it a little more simple for a lower grade level. We're ready to help you. And I will also provide along with that the crossword puzzle and some of the other things that we have. I will say that our workbooks, the new workbooks, will probably not be available until June or July, but they will be ready in time for the next school year. So that's something to look out for as well. Teresa, I really want to thank you for hosting us. We really appreciate this opportunity.
And thank you all for taking time out of your day. I know teachers are just incredibly busy. So just really appreciate you, hanging out at the end of the day to learn about this. And again, if you do have questions or need anything, please reach out to us because we love working with our teachers in our area. So
thank you to both of you, and thanks for sharing. And I love these new resources that you've added to your website and the video and these slides. It's going to be great. I know a lot of teachers are going to be excited to have this. So we will be sharing these out with our teachers in a follow-up email, and we will add them to our website as well. So people will have the links if they come to visit our climate website. So thank you very much, everybody, for today's program. And I'm going to stop recording. And